Thank you very much, Danny, for a terrific talk. A great example, I think, of innovation at recovery.gov was certainly a terrific example of that, and the whole stimulus program. Interesting examples of innovation that are occurring right now throughout the federal government, and a stirring call for more. Now, there's no more important department to think about when you are considering innovation, of course, than the Department of Defense, by far our largest department of government. It is really critical in the Department of Defense for all the budget trends we've heard, but here we are talking about not only doing more with less, but also our status, our standing, our reputation, our position in the world. And so it's critical that the Department of Defense get it right. And we have, I'm proud to introduce one of the leaders of the Defense Department's reform and management reform effort, Dave Wennergren. He's a key leader in the Office of the Deputy Chief Management Officer of the Defense Department. That is an office led by Beth McGrath, who is a Senate-confirmed official, and so that fact alone speaks to the importance that the Congress and others place on this office. Much like the Honorable Robert Gates, whom he served when Secretary Gates served as the Secretary of Defense in two administrations. Dave's is a remarkable story of success in the difficult corridors of our national security bureaucracies. Like Secretary Gates, he started at the very bottom of the GS5 level right out of college, and he rose to become probably the leading expert, certainly one of the leading experts on technology as it affects government operations. As Deputy Chief Management Officer in the Department of Defense, together with Beth McGrath, he oversees all the key systems that the department uses to run its business operations, including billions of dollars in spending on information technology, acquisition systems, personnel systems, and the office, I might add, holds the distinction of having overseen reforms in the national security clearance process that have, for the first time in years, removed a defense-related critical management issue from the GAO's high-risk list. I'm proud to say that Dave and Beth have partnered with us on a very interesting and ongoing series of briefings on key defense management topics. I know of no one better equipped to talk about important innovation happening in the federal government than Dave Wennergren. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. It's great to be here with you. I'm not Beth McGrath, but I play her on TV. And I know we're a little bit behind, but I'm going to talk fast to make up for it because I have a couple of stories that I want to tell you this morning. There are tremendous opportunities in the world right now, tremendous opportunities to change effectively, but the times are changing. I was reading in Wired Magazine's latest issue, they have an article about how do you spot innovation trends. And they talked about two key themes. Talked about the theme about questioning assumptions and looking through the world through a different lens. And it kind of speaks to the heart of one of the big challenges that we face, is that all of you are highly successful individuals who have risen through the ranks to the positions you currently hold now. And one of the reasons that you've been so successful is because you have become experts at the way the system works. And the problem for us all is that the skills that brought us to the place that we are today are not necessarily going to be the skills that are going to take us to the future. And so this idea about being able to build upon the experiential base that you have, but looking at the future a little differently, is a fascinating conundrum. My dad used to beat it into my head over and over again, that you need the right tool for the job. And I'm going to make the case over the next 10, 12 minutes or so that not only has the tools changed for you, but the nature of the actual job that you're trying to get accomplished has changed too. So if you'll indulge me, I have a Dave's top 10 list for the day. Top 10 things that are fostering a culture of innovation, and I'm going to do 10 things in 10 minutes. So hold on to your hats, because I'm going to talk fast. All right, fostering a culture of innovation, the first and foremost thing is you have to confront the reality of today. And you've heard it in all the remarks that have preceded me this morning. The pace of technological change provides tremendous opportunities. And I know it's a world filled with lots of hype and buzzwords, but there is truth in each of those hypes and buzzwords. And if you leverage them as waves of change that are taking place all around you, you can foster change in your organizations too. The power of moving from a systems kind of world to a service-oriented world. The power of Web 2.0 and this ability to mash up things. This democratization of technology that says the things that used to take computer programmers weeks to do now takes hours to do overnight as you mash up technologies and use tools like social networks. The power of the cloud. And I know everybody goes, oh yeah, the cloud, you know. And where I work, a lot of people go, I'm happy to be in the cloud as long as none of the rest of you are in that cloud. You know? We have special clouds. And you're right, for some things you do, but everything isn't that kind of special thing. But if you understand these waves of change, you can leverage them to make a profound difference. The challenge is there's this competing issue that Danny talked about a lot in his remarks, and that is the financial pressures that we all face. And so your challenge is, I'm dubbing you lightning rods for change this morning. Your challenge in trying to embrace these waves of change is that whenever financial times get tough, what we tend to do is sort of hunker down. Right? And the first things that fall off the bus are the new things. And the status quo things are the things that survive because they've been in the budget, we know what they do. And so all the legacy things survive, and the new things are the first to fall off the bus. And so your challenge is, how do you take advantage of this changing pace of technology and not fall into the habit of whenever times get tough financially that you're just going to hunker down? Because I'll tell you, some of these business systems in the Defense Department are pretty old. But you know, they have constituencies that grew them up. They developed the systems, they designed them, they've taken them into their sustainment. They're like their babies, and they love their babies. And you know, as the change agent, sometimes your job is to let people know that their babies are ugly. Which isn't always an interesting thing to do, but I'm telling you, some of the babies that we have are old enough they should have gone to college long ago. All right, so number 9. It's all about the data. I wish it was a sexier topic. You know, this is the point of the conversation where it goes, oh yeah. But I was impressed to see it's right up here on the backdrop. So look, Economist Magazine had a big story about data last year, a big data supplement, and they actually said in it, the data is sexy. So everybody tells you data is not sexy. The #1 sexy job in the Economist Magazine last year was data scientist. So, okay, so maybe the Economist Magazine sets a low bar for what's sexy. I'll leave that up to your discretion. But I will tell you, this power of having data-driven decisions changes the world. You look at successful companies like Walmart, and what are they able to do? They're able to take this massive amount of data they collect and use them to do smart analytics and business intelligence. And the truth will set you free, and data is what gets you to the truth. So don't underestimate that. In a company like Walmart, when the hurricane season starts in Florida, they know what kind of things to ship to Florida. This is your bar bet for the night if you want something for happy hour after this long day of conferencing, right? You know, when you go to the bar tonight, you want to win the bet. What are 2 things that grow most in demand during hurricane season at Walmart's in Florida? Strawberry Pop-Tarts, you got it, and beer. All right, there you go. See, you learned valuable knowledge from me this morning. No, the power of understanding the data that you have and how you can use it to drive better decision making is hugely important. Number 8, the power of alignment. There's a book by George Labovitz and Victor Rosansky. It was written about a decade ago, but it still holds power today. If you can't describe the main thing that you work on and why that main thing makes a difference, and then make all the decisions about how you do your work based on that main thing, then you know that saying about any road will do. Have a main thing for your organization. It can vary. For my office, we came up with a main thing that was all about, you know, the business change that we do and how it supports the warfighter. You pick the thing that matters to you, but the beauty of it is that our team created it, and so they're able to assess every job that they do against it. And it's just as important to pick the things you're going to work on as the things you're going to stop working on so that you can focus your time and attention on the things that make a difference. In the Department of the Navy years ago, the Navy team made great progress by aligning to main things across a huge functional stovepipe. So if you think about the aviation business, there are commands in the Navy that buy planes, maintain planes, hire pilots, train pilots, operate planes. They're all different chains of commands, but they align to a common outcome called aircraft ready for tasking, and how they could describe how everything they did in each of the separate commands built to that overarching goal. If you don't have a strategic plan, it's hard to get the team focused. We have one at the Department of Defense called our Strategic Management Plan that's all about the business imperatives of our entire Department of Defense. The power of it is, though, if you have outcome-oriented measures that are incorporated into it. Because you don't want a strategic plan to just be the shiny thing that gets left on the shelf. It has to be about the key goals and the outcomes are measurable so you can assess the progress of your plans. Number 7, maintaining an enterprise view. There is almost no challenge that any of you face today that isn't about crossing organizational boundaries. And no matter where you work in the organization, you're part of a bigger enterprise. And so how can you move to take advantage of the size of the enterprise of which you're a part? The Naval Sea Systems Command is a very big place in the Navy. It would be way up on the Fortune 100 if it was taken out of the Navy and made a private firm. But it's just part of the Navy, which is part of the Department of Defense, which is part of the federal government. And understanding how to align to an enterprise view so that you can share resources and share outcomes is hugely important. But it strikes at the heart of all the things that we don't like, which is giving up personal control. Because we always feel a lot better when we just, give me the money, get out of my way, let me go take the job done. And the power of so much of the world today is this ability to rely upon others to help get the world done. Having a common IT platform, having an enterprise architecture, leveraging your buying power. All these things are examples about being part of a bigger enterprise instead of building just for yourself. We can no longer afford for every program of record to build out its own infrastructure. I mean, it takes time and it takes money and it's wasted money if you have a common platform that everybody can build upon. Number 6, fix the process first. We become so enamored with we start to talk about the outcomes that we want to achieve. We have that lofty conversation, and then we immediately leap to the IT system. And we stop talking about, it's like the shiny object, and we stop talking about the process that we want to optimize, the result that we want to attain. If you don't look at things as end-to-end processes that both cross organizational boundaries and functional stovepipes in an organization, then you're hopelessly mired in repetitive and duplicative things. If you can fix the process first. If you look at something like the defense travel system, it's a big system in the Department of Defense. It's a great accounting system. I mean, I get paid like a day after I travel, and it's all paperless, and so that's good. I mean, it's not like a modern-day travel service. And on top of that, of course, the travel process didn't change. And so if you're left with a really cumbersome travel process, then it's very hard to use the kinds of commercial services that you want to use, Expedia, Orbitz, Travelocity, things like that. I would say in the partnership that DoD and the Department of Veterans Affairs is doing now on health IT, that there's a change afoot, and that's one of the changes that you're seeing, is that there are 100+ VA hospitals, 100+ DoD medical treatment facilities, and every function is sort of done differently across those two organizations. Pharmacy, getting a prescription filled, sounds like a common thing, but it's not. And if you don't do what they did, which was first to say, let's map the process, and then let's optimize it and come up with a common process, then you'll never be able to buy a common pharmacy application for two big departments. Process first. Number 5, status quo can no longer afford to get a buy. The DoD is a big place. 3.5 million people, $38 billion a year IT budget, $7 billion or so just spent on business systems in the Department of Defense. And of that $7 billion spent on business system, 75% of it is for sustainment, like maintaining the old. And only 25% of it is maintaining the new. The babies have a strong foothold, but some of them need to be replaced by this new world. You can't survive on a budget that only focuses a little bit of the time and resources on the future. And if you've read books like The Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen, then you know that what often happens is the new ideas don't take root inside the fabric of the organization. And that's why there's huge power to these ideas about experimentation and pilots and risk reductions and other phrases that don't make the status quo nervous at first, but give a new idea a chance to grow. New ideas need a chance to be outside of the fabric of the organization so they can take flight, so they can get escape velocity. Right? Because otherwise the sort of status quo process mires it down. And the book tells you a lot of examples about how that takes place. But the power of doing things like small experimentations and pilots and things like that are there. They give you the ability to demonstrate that something actually does work without upsetting the status quo at first. Now the challenge for you is that they can't live out here forever. Because if they do, then they inevitably die off once the strategic leader that was focusing time and attention on them goes away. So the art is to pull things out of the fabric of the organization to allow them to take flight, and then get them folded back into the processes of the organization so that they become part of the consciousness and fabric of the organization as you go forward. Number 4, creating an execution-oriented culture. There's so much to be said about performance management. You've heard it all morning. You'll hear it all through the rest of the day. If you're an optimist like me, you would describe it as management by attention, because the things the boss focuses the time attention on, the rest of the team focuses time attention on. If you're a pessimist, you call it management by embarrassment. And I don't care which way you want to look at it, but it's true. The things that we measure are the things that we focus our time and attention on. There's another great book called Execution by Larry Bossidy and Ram Charan. It walks you through how to create execution-oriented cultures. Because if you can't measure the progress of your plans, then the really cool strategic plan that you have will never help you get anywhere. And the challenge is that you look at an organization and draw a bell curve of all the people that work there. There are very few of them that are living out here, like all of you, as lightning rods for change. The majority of them are at best change neutral, or perhaps change averse. So how do you help an organizational culture that's change averse to start to embrace the power of the new? And the art of it is what you measure. Because if you measure things, you can see that you're making progress, and that you can then celebrate some of the successes that you have, and you can overcome the reticence to face the change and to take the leap into the new world. All right, you're almost home. Number 3, there's a polarity at work today between two hugely important things in the information space. Information sharing. I mean, the reason why lives were saved in Haiti after the earthquake, in part, was because of the power of tools like Facebook and other social media things that allowed government organizations like the military to collaborate with non-government humanitarian organizations and be able to share information. Power of information sharing is profound. At the same time, the threat to our networks and our security and our identities is profound too. And if we view those as two separate problems to solve, we will always fail to advance the cause. And I offer you this idea about polarity management, being able to look at two things that seem separate and viewing them as a way to manage the world together as something that it can be a skill that you will find over and over again in your life. The power between innovation and reform and stability and change, the power about the enterprise view and the local view, these are all examples about if you optimize on one, you do so at great peril of the system. And if we allow our security concerns to just only come up with the answer of how do I improve security, which is to lock things down, then I will never be able to share. And if I'm over here and I'm the sharing person and all I care about is being happy and sharing and I don't think about the security risks, right, then the intellectual capital of the company or the nation is at risk. But if I could think about the two things together, I might choose different security solutions. And so I would ask you today, if you're an information assurance professional, that instead of saying information security or cybersecurity for just one day, humor me and use the phrase secure information sharing. Phrase that's sort of trying to get at the idea about we got to be able to share information more effectively with people we never even dreamed possible. And so the security practices of the past, firewalls and intrusion detection systems and all those kinds of things which are necessary but not sufficient, have to be augmented by how can you get onto any device, do self-service transactions from any device anywhere, get to the information you need and get your job done. And it will force us to think of different security solutions. Number 2, the workforce of the future is radically different than the workforce of the past. People like me from the baby boom generation are getting older and ready to retire. The beauty of it is that the new generation, this net generation, this generation that has grown up digital, has a yen for public service. But they're not like my parents' generation where they're willing to just go work for the company for 40 years regardless of, get the gold wash and leave. They need an environment that will unleash their creativity and allow them to contribute and innovate. So are you helping to create an environment that allows people to share information, use the latest technologies, and things like that, or are you not? And if you're not, then you won't be an employer of choice. There's a great report out on the Federal CIO Council website about the net generation. I can commend it to you all. It has great little tips about how to be an employer of choice for the net generation workforce. And having talked really, really fast, but trying to get us desperately back to our schedule, I'm going to end with one last one. I joked in the beginning about you all being lightning rods for change. But you really are, because all this change stuff has very little to do with technology and has so much more to do with people. It would be so easy if there weren't people around. No, I mean, you got to understand the view of the person, right? And so if you want somebody to understand the pace of change and be able to be willing to innovate and take a different tact, you have to be thoughtful about what sort of drives and motivates people. And so thinking about being a personal change leader is really important. I would offer to you that there are many things that you could study. We could talk for hours about it, but I'm going to tell you two last things. One is that there are a couple of things that affect all of us today, I think, in large organizations, both public and private. And one of them is a lack of trust. low trust organizations have a hard time ever innovating and getting to the future. There's a book by Stephen Covey Jr. called The Speed of Trust. This is not Stephen Covey, the 7 Habits guy, but his son. And it's a great book because, as with most good books, he starts the book by telling you, some personal story that like supposed to make you think. And he starts with, we judge ourselves by our good intentions, but we judge everybody else by their actual actions. And perhaps that's a double standard, right, that we have to get over. But the beauty of his book is that he talks about how you can actually quantify the additional cost and the additional time it takes to get anything done if you work in a low-trust organization. And we are surrounded in low-trust organizations. And the beauty of the book is that he explains to you how you can actually build trust. And it has a lot to do with the whole list that I got you to at this moment in time, although the book is still worth reading, right? Data-driven transparency, the availability to show trust first, and things like that. But don't underestimate the importance of creating trust relationships in the places that you work so that you can drive change to happen faster. And the other final thought about people is that in successful organizations, and I would argue that you all come from successful organizations, it's very hard to maintain a sense of urgency. It's very easy to, to let the successes of the past sort of lull you into, a lesser pace. And so John Kotter has written a lot about change. He's written a book called Maintaining a Sense of Urgency. In the book, he talks a lot about, so how do you actually maintain a sense of urgency in an organization? And how do you differentiate between a true sense of urgency about trying to get something done and maintaining focus on what really matters and letting the things that don't matter be cast aside, from perhaps you've worked in an organization that has a frenetic pace of activity, but it doesn't seem to be like delivering results because it's just sort of angst and anxiety driven, right? And so this sounds hard, and it is. As I said at the beginning, I'm a hopeless optimist, so I can make it sound easy, but it's not. And so therapy is an option. If you don't want to afford therapy, read a couple good leadership books, spend the rest of the day hearing great ideas from the rest of the folks at this conference. Good luck, be great change leaders. Thanks for having me.